Rachel sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars her son, Liam, had carefully stuck to the ceiling. "They'll keep the nightmares away, Mom," he had said, his bright eyes filled with innocence. But Rachel knew the real nightmare wasn't in the dark. It was inside her, growing stronger every day, stealing what little time she had left. The doctors had said it was stage 4. They had said it was terminal. They had said it was a matter of months. Rachel had called it unfair. She had fought for everything in life, worked double shifts at a rundown diner in New Orleans, skipped meals so Liam would never go hungry, patched up his school uniform so he wouldn't feel different from the other kids. But no amount of sleepless nights, no amount of sacrifice, could change the inevitable. From the next room, she heard Liam's soft laughter as he played with his action figures. He had no idea his real-life superhero, his mom, was fighting a battle she couldn't win. "Mom, can you tuck me in?" Rachel swallowed the lump in her throat, forced a smile, and walked to his bedside. "Mommy's right here, sweetheart. Always." "You promise?" Rachel's heart ached. She had made so many promises, but this was the one promise she couldn't keep. Rachel lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts spiraling into the one place she tried to avoid, Liam's future without her. The thought was unbearable. He was only 8, too young to understand the weight of what was happening, too young to face the world alone. Her mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Would he end up in foster care? Would he be shuffled between relatives who barely knew him? Would he feel abandoned, forgotten? Number. She couldn't let that happen. Rachel had spent her entire life fighting to give Liam the best she could. She had worked double shifts, skipped meals, and gone without sleep just to make sure he had everything he needed. But no amount of hard work could change the fact that she was running out of time. Her chest tightened as she glanced toward the bedroom door. Liam was asleep, curled up with his teddy bear, his face peaceful, unaware of the storm coming. Tears welled up in her eyes. Who would love him like she did? Who would teach him to be strong, to be kind, to believe in himself? Her hands trembled as she clutched the blanket. She had to find someone, not just anyone. Someone who wouldn't just give him a roof over his head, but someone who would fight for him, protect him, be his rock when she no longer could. Her gaze flickered to the old TV in the corner of the room. Mike Tyson's face filled the screen. Liam adored him. He mimicked his punches, watched his old fights on YouTube, and always talked about how Tyson was the toughest man on the planet. Rachel's breath hitched. It was crazy, impossible. But what if? What if the one person Liam idolized, the man he looked up to more than anyone, was the one who could make sure he was never alone? Her heart pounded as an idea took hold. She had nothing to lose. Rachel grabbed a pen and a crumpled piece of paper from the kitchen table. Her fingers trembled as she began to write. "Dear Mike Tyson." She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't asking for pity. She was asking for a promise. A promise that her son would never feel like he had no one left in this world. As she sealed the envelope, she whispered a silent prayer. "Please, just read it." The next morning, she drove to the post office, gripping the letter so tightly her knuckles turned white. With a deep breath, she slid it into the slot. It was out of her hands now. Rachel had no idea if the letter would even reach him. No idea if he would ever see it. No idea that this one desperate act was about to change everything. What happens next will shock you. Will Mike Tyson see the letter? Will he respond? If you think he will, comment YES below. If you think Rachel is wasting her time, comment no and tell us why. And if you want to know what happens next, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss this. Days passed, then a week, then 2. Rachel checked the mailbox every morning, her heart racing every time she pulled it open, only to find nothing. No letter, no response, no sign that her desperate plea had reached anyone. She told herself it had been foolish. Why would a man like Mike Tyson, a global legend, a former heavyweight champion, a man with a life so far removed from hers, ever see her letter, let alone respond? She tried to push the thought from her mind, but at night when Liam was asleep, the fear crept back in. She wasn't getting better. The doctors had been right. The pain was worse. Her body was weaker. Time was slipping through her fingers like sand, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Then, on a cold Thursday evening, everything changed. Rachel was sitting at the kitchen table, barely able to keep her eyes open, when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. She hesitated. No one ever called her. Slowly, she picked up. Hello? At first, there was silence. Then, a deep voice rumbled through the speaker. Is this Rachel? Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The voice was unmistakable, gravelly, powerful, but somehow gentle. It was him, Mike Tyson. She gripped the phone tighter, her mind struggling to process what was happening. I read your letter, he said, his tone steady. I need to see you. Rachel's pulse pounded in her ears. This isn't real. This isn't happening. Mike, where are you? He interrupted, his voice calm but firm. I'm coming to you. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Her voice barely above a whisper, she gave him the address. Then, silence. The call ended. She sat there, phone still clutched in her hand, staring at the wall in disbelief. And then, as if fate itself was moving, the world outside her tiny house shifted. Headlights pierced through the darkness. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop in front of her home. Rachel stood frozen as the car door opened. A tall, broad-shouldered figure stepped out. It was him. Mike Tyson. Liam, who had been playing on the floor, looked up, and his entire world stopped. His action figures tumbled from his hands. No way, he whispered. Rachel barely had time to process what was happening before Liam bolted forward, throwing the door open. Mike Tyson is at my house. Mike crouched down, meeting Liam at eye level. Hey, champ. His voice was softer now. I heard you like my fights. Liam, still in shock, nodded furiously. Mike smiled. Good, 'cause real fighters never give up. Rachel swallowed back the sob rising in her throat, because for the first time in a long time, she believed that might be true. Rachel stood in the doorway, her breath shallow, her mind struggling to catch up with reality. Mike Tyson, the Mike Tyson, was standing in her front yard. The streetlights cast long shadows over his frame, his presence larger than life. He wasn't just a champion in the ring, he was a force, an unstoppable force, and now somehow he was here, for her son. Liam clutched the edge of the doorway, his small frame vibrating with excitement. His mouth hung open in disbelief. Are you real? He finally managed. Mike chuckled, his deep voice filling the night air. He knelt down, his massive hands resting on his knees. What do you think, champ? Liam didn't hesitate. He launched himself forward, wrapping his arms around Mike's waist like he'd known him forever. Rachel covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Mike held the boy tightly, his massive arms gentle but firm. You're my hero, Liam blurted. Mike pulled back, looking him straight in the eyes. Nah, kid. Your mom, she's the real hero. Rachel's chest tightened. For years she had been the fighter, the one pushing through exhaustion, through pain, through fear. But now, she had never felt smaller. Mike stood, turning his gaze to Rachel. His expression shifted. Serious now, almost unreadable. Can we talk? Rachel swallowed hard and nodded. Inside, the air felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. Mike sat on the worn-out couch, his massive hands clasped together as he studied Rachel. I've met a lot of people, Rachel, but your letter, it hit different. She gripped the armrest of her chair, forcing herself to stay steady. I'm not asking for much, she whispered. Mike's gaze darkened. You're asking for everything. Rachel's breath caught. You're asking me to step in, to be something I never had, to make sure your boy never feels alone in this world. His voice was calm, but there was something raw beneath it, something deep. Rachel looked down at her hands. I know it's too much to ask. No, Mike interrupted. Rachel's head snapped up. It's not too much. He exhaled, rubbing his hands over his face. It's just, I know what that kind of loneliness feels like. Silence filled the room. Rachel could feel the weight of his words. I grew up without a father. I know what it does to a kid. The doubt, the anger, the feeling that you don't belong anywhere. His voice dropped lower. And I know what it's like to fight the world alone. Rachel felt her throat tighten. I won't let that happen to Liam, Mike said, his voice unwavering. I promise you, he won't be alone. Rachel pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. This wasn't just a moment. This was hope. Rachel sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the couch as Mike Tyson's words hung in the air. I promise you, he won't be alone. A promise. One that carried the weight of a lifetime. One that could change everything. Liam, oblivious to the gravity of the conversation, sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes locked onto Mike like he was watching the biggest fight of his life. His excitement had barely faded, still bubbling just beneath the surface. Mom, did you hear that? Liam beamed. Mike Tyson said I won't be alone. Rachel blinked, struggling to hold back tears. She had spent weeks drowning in the thought of what would happen to Liam after she was gone. Nights of agony, questioning if she was making the right choice, if she was doing enough. And now, sitting in her living room, was a man who had nothing to gain, a man who owed her nothing, but was still offering Liam something priceless: security, a future, a place in this world. Mike leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, his gaze locked onto Rachel's. "I don't make promises lightly," he said. His voice was steady, but Rachel could hear something else beneath it, something real. "I know you don't," she whispered. She exhaled shakily, forcing herself to look him in the eyes. "But why?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this?" Mike let out a slow breath, running a hand over his face before leaning back. "Because I know what it feels like to be a kid with no one to turn to." His voice was quiet now, but firm. "And I know what it's like to wish, just once, that someone would step in and say, 'I got you.'" Rachel swallowed hard. Mike turned to Liam, his expression softening. "You like boxing, huh?" Liam's eyes lit up. "Are you kidding? You're the greatest fighter ever." Mike chuckled, shaking his head. "You know what makes a great fighter?" he asked. Liam scrunched his face in concentration. "Being strong?" Mike tapped a finger to his chest. "Nah, it's in here, kid. It's about heart, about standing back up when life knocks you down." Rachel closed her eyes for a second, willing herself to stay composed. This moment, this impossible, unbelievable moment, was real. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something she had almost forgotten: relief. Liam was going to be okay. Mike wasn't just saying words, he meant them. And Rachel? For the first time since her diagnosis, she finally let herself believe it. Rachel sat in stunned silence, absorbing the reality of what had just happened. Mike Tyson, the man her son idolized, the man who had no reason to be here, had just promised to be there for Liam, to make sure he would never be alone. She wanted to believe it. She needed to believe it. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered, "What if it's just words? What if, once the camera stopped rolling and life moved on, this promise faded like so many others?" Rachel had spent her entire life relying on no one but herself. She had learned the hard way that the world didn't offer handouts, that people made promises they never intended to keep. Could she really trust this? Liam, on the other hand, had no hesitation. "Mike, can you teach me how to box?" he blurted, his face lighting up with hope. Mike chuckled, shaking his head. "You're already fighting, kid. You just don't know it yet." Liam's brows furrowed. "Huh?" Mike leaned forward, locking eyes with the boy. "Fighting ain't just about throwing punches. It's about getting up when life knocks you down. It's about pushing through when everything tells you to quit. And trust me, champ, you've got more fight in you than most grown men I've ever met." Rachel swallowed hard, because she knew what he meant. Liam had been fighting since the day he was born. He just didn't realize it yet. But as much as she wanted to believe in this moment, reality loomed like a dark shadow. She was getting weaker. The pain was worse. Time was slipping away. And soon, she wouldn't be here to see what came next. Mike must have sensed it because he turned to her, his expression serious. "I know this ain't easy," he said, "but I meant what I said. You don't have to worry about Liam. I got him." Rachel's breath hitched. "Why?" Mike hesitated for only a second before answering. "Because I should have had someone like that when I was a kid." Silence filled the room. Rachel felt something inside her break, some wall she had built to keep herself from hoping too much. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just words. Maybe Mike Tyson really meant it. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Mike Tyson will really step up and change Liam's life? Or do you think this is just another promise waiting to be broken? Comment yes if you believe in Mike. Comment no if you think Liam is still on his own. And if you need to know what happens next, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because trust me, this story is far from over. The days that followed were some of the most precious Rachel had left. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't waking up in a panic, wondering what would happen to Liam once she was gone. She wasn't lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, drowning in fear. Because now, she wasn't alone in this fight, and neither was Liam. Mike Tyson had stepped in. not just with words, but with presence. He didn't just visit once and disappear. He kept coming back. Every afternoon, Liam would race to the window the moment he heard a car pull up outside. And every time, without fail, Mike would step out of that black SUV, a grin on his face, ready to spend another day with the boy who had unknowingly changed his life just as much as he had changed Liam's. They trained together, well, sort of. Mike showed Liam how to throw a punch, how to keep his feet light, how to stay balanced. But more than anything, he taught him about discipline, respect, and resilience. Boxing ain't about hurting people, kid, he told Liam one afternoon, watching as the boy eagerly bounced on the balls of his feet, fists raised. It's about control. It's about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. And most of all, it's about knowing that you're strong enough to take whatever life throws at you. Rachel sat on the porch, watching them from a distance. Her body was getting weaker. The pain was worse. But her heart was lighter. Liam was laughing more, smiling more. For the first time since her diagnosis, Rachel didn't feel like she was leaving him with nothing. She was leaving him with hope. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rachel called Liam over. He plopped down beside her on the worn-out couch, his little hand wrapping around hers. "Sweetheart, you know how much Mommy loves you, right?" Liam nodded. "To the moon and back." She smiled, though it hurt. "I need you to remember something, okay? Even when I'm not here, you're never alone. You're so loved. You're so strong. And you will always, always have someone looking out for you." Liam's face fell. "You're not leaving, right? You promised you wouldn't leave." Rachel's throat tightened. She fought back the tears threatening to spill. "I'll always be with you, baby. Always." She placed a hand over his heart. Liam didn't say anything. He just leaned into her, resting his head against her shoulder, as if trying to hold on to the moment forever. And Rachel let him, because she knew, soon, moments like this would only be memories. In 2025, stories like Rachel and Liam's remind us that true kindness still exists, even in a fast-paced, technology-driven world. Today, we see more people turning to social media to share their struggles, hoping for a helping hand. But what if we became that helping hand? What if, like Mike Tyson, we stepped in when someone needed us the most? This story isn't just about a mother's love or a boxing legend's generosity. It's about the power of human connection. It proves that one person's promise can shape a child's future, that a single act of compassion can ripple into something greater. Now, Liam stands at a crossroads. He has lost his mother but gained a mentor, a protector, someone who sees his potential and believes in him. But what comes next? How can we continue to support children like Liam, those who have lost everything but still hold on to hope? If this story touched your heart, comment. Stay strong, Liam. To show him he's not alone. What advice would you give him as he steps into the future? Drop your thoughts below. And if you believe more stories like this should be told, like this video, share it. And subscribe for more real-life moments that restore faith in humanity. Because sometimes, the world needs a reminder. Kindness is the most powerful force of all. A grin on his face, ready to spend another day with the boy who had unknowingly changed his life just as much as he had changed Liam's. They trained together, well, sort of. Mike showed Liam how to throw a punch, how to keep his feet light, how to stay balanced. But more than anything, he taught him about discipline, respect, and resilience. "Boxing ain't about hurting people, kid," he told Liam one afternoon, watching as the boy eagerly bounced on the balls of his feet, fists raised. It's about control. It's about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. And most of all, it's about knowing that you're strong enough to take whatever life throws at you. Rachel sat on the porch, watching them from a distance. Her body was getting weaker. The pain was worse. But her heart was lighter. Liam was laughing more, smiling more. For the first time since her diagnosis, Rachel didn't feel like she was leaving him with nothing. She was leaving him with hope. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rachel called Liam over. He plopped down beside her on the worn-out couch, his little hand wrapping around hers. Sweetheart, you know how much Mommy loves you, right? Liam nodded. To the moon and back. She smiled, though it hurt. I need you to remember something, okay? Even when I'm not here, you're never alone. You're so loved. You're so strong. And you will always, always have someone looking out for you. Liam's face fell. You're not leaving, right? You promised you wouldn't leave. Rachel's throat tightened. She fought back the tears threatening to spill. I'll always be with you, baby. Always. She placed a hand over his heart. Liam didn't say anything. He just leaned into her, resting his head against her shoulder, as if trying to hold on to the moment forever. And Rachel let him, because she knew, soon, moments like this would only be memories. In 2025, stories like Rachel and Liam's remind us that true kindness still exists, even in a fast-paced, technology-driven world. Today, we see more people turning to social media to share their struggles, hoping for a helping hand. But what if we became that helping hand? What if, like Mike Tyson, we stepped in when someone needed us the most? This story isn't just about a mother's love or a boxing legend's generosity. It's about the power of human connection. It proves that one person's promise can shape a child's future, that a single act of compassion can ripple into something greater. Now, Liam stands at a crossroads. He has lost his mother but gained a mentor, a protector, someone who sees his potential and believes in him. But what comes next? How can we continue to support children like Liam, those who have lost everything but still hold on to hope? If this story touched your heart, comment. Stay strong, Liam. To show him he's not alone. What advice would you give him as he steps into the future? Drop your thoughts below. And if you believe more stories like this should be told, like this video, share it. And subscribe for more real-life moments that restore faith in humanity. Because sometimes, the world needs a reminder. Kindness is the most powerful force of all.